Hi there, Jeep owners. Today in your 2017 Jeep Grand Cherokee, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Demco's Tabless Base Plate. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection point between your motorhome and your vehicle. You'll need your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. You'll need your base plate, which is the connection point on your vehicle that your tow bar will attach to. You'll also need your diode wiring, which will take all the lighting signals from our motorhome and transfer them to the lights on our vehicles so people behind us know our intentions when going down the road. And lastly, you'll need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes on our vehicle when we hit the brakes in our motorhome. And this is what our base plate looks like when it's installed. You can see your connection points passing through where your tow hooks used to be. And everything else is going to pretty much be hidden completely behind the bumper. There is an electrical connector mounting bracket that comes included with your kit. So you get to actually choose where you put this bracket. We decided to just pop ours right here in the middle, and it also made a great mounting location for a breakaway switch if you're installing a braking system. Next to our connection point for our tow bar, we've got a hole here for our safety chains, and there's one located on each side, so we've got everything we need for our flat tow setup. Unlike some of the competitors that do have removable tabs that go in these openings, Demco has a new design that instead of having removable tabs that goes in here, the removable tabs replace the arms and at the end of your tow bar, so you don't have to worry about needing any type of adapter to work with this base plate either. The tabless design attaches to the tow bar, and then we'll go in here and we're going to show you how to get that hooked up. Now, this is a great base plate, and it did come out looking very nice with the overall install when it was done. But me personally, I would prefer Roadmaster's base plate over Demco's base plate just because the installation is going to be easier and the mounting location for your electrical connectors and things are going to be better incorporated on the Roadmaster, so we won't have to trim quite so much out. It ended up looking very nice here in the front, but there was a lot of trimming involved. And now when you're ready to use your tow bar, we can bring the arms up and attach it to our base plate. Now, one of the things you are going to notice that's different here is that the arms on our tow bar here have different ends on them, because with a Demco base plate, with which we are using, the tabless style comes with ends that must be installed on the tow bar, and that's what we've got here. These will slide directly into our tow bar, so we'll just line them up, find the right spot because they do twist into position. Once you have it twisted into position, your holes will line up, and we can install the included pin that came with our base plate. We'll then do the same thing over on the other side. Once you've got your tow bar attached to the base plate, you can finish up connecting the rest of your flat tow components, such as your safety cables, wiring, and braking system. When hooking up your safety cables on your motorhome side, you want to make sure you cross your cables. So you'll see here, I'm taking the one from our driver's side and hooking it to the passenger side on our motorhome, and vice versa over on the other side, to create a cradle in the event of a catastrophic disconnect. Our components here will get caught in this cradle, and that'll keep it from digging into our pavement. Now, with the rest of our flat tow components hooked up, we're ready to place our vehicle into tow mode and hit the road. We'll begin our installation underneath the hood by removing the push pins from the top of our grill. There's going to be one on each side, and we'll take those out with our screwdriver by inserting the end in the small opening. And then we give a little twist, and that'll pop out the center of the pin. We can then just pull the pin out. If the center comes out by itself, no big deal. You can then just get your screwdriver underneath the bottom piece and pop that one up as well. We're then going to remove the rivets on our wheel well area here so we can get this trim piece off. We're going to use a 3/16 drill bit to drill out the rivets. Once you've got the center drilled out, the rivet can just be pulled out of there. Sometimes it does get a little caught, but it will just pull off of there. And we need to do the same thing with this one up here. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. With those drilled out, now we can pull the trim piece back And we just need to pull it back far enough to where we are past the point here to where it's separated so they're no longer being held together. On the inside now, we have a 10mm bolt we're going to remove. This is right at about the same point where the front fascia piece met the fender, and that'll let us pull this back. When we pull this back now, you have your fog lights here, if you do have that option in your vehicle. We can go ahead and disconnect the electrical connector for the fog lights. There's these little clips here. There's one on each side, so you just kind of got to pull it off, pull it out as you pull down to release it. We'll disconnect the other side as well. Now underneath the vehicle at the front, along the bottom, you're going to have these small, actually they're quite large, twist pins that hold your front fascia in. We want to turn them all counterclockwise. There's a total of 5. 3 run across the front and the middle, and then there's 1 on each side. We want to turn those and either remove them or just ensure that they're loose. It's probably easiest if you just pull them out of there after you turn them. That way you don't have to mess with them while we're taking the fascia off. We can now start removing our fascia. We're going to start on one side by just popping out the edge here. Just kind of give it a nice tug outward, staying towards the seam here, and we're just going to work our way towards the center. And once I get to right about there to where it pops out under the headlight, I like to stop then on this side, and then I'll go get the other side to this point. Once you've got both sides popped out to about the center, we can then come here to the middle and start working it off. These top pieces, you'll need to pull up on them a little bit as they got little hangers that kind of catch on something. So just kind of be working that gently up as we're pulling it away. Now that we've got it removed completely, we can set it aside where it's not going to get damaged. Your next steps are going to vary quite a bit depending on the options you have. If you have factory tow hooks, you'll want to remove those. Our vehicle doesn't have those from the factory, so we can just continue on. If you do have tow hooks, you'll want to refer to your instructions to get those removed. You also want to see if you have an adaptive cruise control. That's going to be a little, kind of almost like a little glass eye that's going to be around in this location here. And if you do have that, that's going to have to get removed and relocated as well. So you'll want to refer to your instructions for that. We don't have that option either, so we're again going to be moving forward. Next, we're going to prepare our hardware. We're going to be using the 10mm diameter bolts that are about 50 millimeters in length. So these are the kind of the shorter ones, but with the thicker diameter for the shorter bolts. And they'll have 4 of these. We're going to place lock washers on each one, and then fender washers after that on each one. So we'll have 4 of these total prepared, and each one is going to get some Loctite on it. We're going to use the blue Loctite that comes included with the kit. Now with the next set of hands, we're going to lift our base plate into position, lining up our base plate with the holes in the bottom of the frame. We can slide our hardware through, and we're going to thread it right into those factory weld nuts. Once you got one started on each side, the base plate will hold itself up, so it'll be easier to install the rest of your hardware. Now for getting the back bolt in, the easiest thing to do there is to just remove this single bolt here at the bottom. We just use our 10mm socket to pull that out, and then we can push this out of the way and we can easily reach our hand up in there. We'll do the same thing over on the other side. We can then go back and tighten down all of our hardware with a 17mm socket. Your back bolts are going to be a little bit tighter. You might be able to get in there with a swivel, but a ratchet will work out pretty well for you. Should be able to get a gun on the front ones pretty easily. We can then go back and torque our hardware to the specifications found in our instructions. We'll now put our safety cables in place. We wanted to wrap this around the frame making sure not to pinch any wiring or hoses when doing so. And once you've got it wrapped around the frame, we're just going to bring it right back onto itself, just like this. And then we're going to use the included quick links to connect them together. So we're just sliding this end over our cable, and we're going to hook the quick link around it like that. So now we've got one side attached to the frame, and the other side here we're actually just going to attach right to our base plate. So we're just going to bring this guy, wrap it around our base plate, and we're just going to bring it back down like that. And just like we did with the other cable, we are going to attach it right back onto itself. So we're just going to slide this on there, slide our other end through, and then once we've got both of our quick links here tightened down, we're going to repeat the same process over on the other side. With our base plate fully torqued down and all of our safety cables attached, we are finished here with it going on to our vehicle. At this point now we can reinstall our fascia in reverse order, but I highly recommend that you stop at this moment and finish the rest of your flat toe setup. Because while we have the fascia off, it's going to make it significantly easier to run your diode wiring and install your braking system. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this flat toe setup, and once I've got all of our other components installed, we'll then show you how to get the fascia back on it and the trimming necessary to fit over our base plate. Now before we can put our fascia back on, we are going to have to do some trimming in order for it to fit again. These air deflectors right here on each side, we're going to need to remove those. So we're just going to cut those off. You can use a cutoff wheel, a pair of snips, or we're using kind of like a tiny sawzall here to remove ours. Next, we need to trim out the opening where our tow hooks would go. Our vehicle didn't have tow hooks, so there's no opening here. If you did have tow hooks, this is likely already open and you don't need to trim it out. But since we do, we're going to be trimming it in a similar fashion. Since we're using that small cutting blade, we're going to drill a hole first so we have our starting point. And then we're just going to cut around, following this around. If you need to, you can put in another hole just so you can change your angles and things like that. At this point, I'm going to drill me another little hole so I can easily make that angle down. And since I know I'm going to need to, we're going to make one here at the bottom. Once you've got it cut all the way around, we can just knock that out of there. And any of these rough edges that we've got here on the inside, we can take a file to and just clean that up. With the one side cut out, I'm now just going to repeat that same process over here on the other side to cut this one out. So now that we've got our fascia trimmed out for our base plate, one of the things that you're going to have is your electrical connector bracket. And there's really not like a specific location that this bracket goes. You can choose to put it wherever you'd like. What I chose to do with this bracket was to take the ears here and I bent them at a 90-degree with the rear holes, and that allowed our connector bracket to kind of sit right like this. This is going to put it in the location where your mesh grill is between the area that we cut out. And I just ran it in with some self-tapping screws. Now again, you can put this wherever you'd like. If you do choose to put it here, then you can follow along with us. This is also where I mounted the breakaway switch for our braking system, as there's an additional hole on each side, so you can choose one side and put your breakaway switch right onto that as well. So we are going to have to cut out for our breakaway switch, and to be able to access this, if you mount yours in a different location, you'll just want to hold your fascia up and trim out around it. We're going to be doing that with ours, so you can follow along and see our hole in the end if you put it in the same spot. Ours is pretty well just centered right in the middle of the vehicle. So now we're going to set our fascia back into position. One of the things you might notice is on each side where our side trim piece was, I took just a piece of paper towel and kind of stuffed it between the trim piece and the fender. That'll just hold those trim pieces out to make it a little easier to get this back in place. We're then just going to hold it up, and then we're going to have to just check to see where we need to trim out for our electrical and breakaway switch. So we can see here the general location. This is actually going to be coming down further once we get it in. So this is kind of the bottom here. It's really going to sit probably closer to this area, but we are going to need to be able to trim out around it so that way we can get it in place. So we're going to trim there, here, trim there, and there. We're going to leave this section here and there. We're going to be taking out the sections here and here. Once we trim out for our breakaway switch here, we can then trim out for our electrical connector back there. For trimming out your grill, I recommend using snips because they work pretty darn good. You can just get in there and just make a nice little cut right at each of those spots. I'm just going to leave just that one and take it straight up here. So now that we've got all that cut out, you can clean off the white stuff with some alcohol. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it because I'm going to have to do a little bit more for our electrical connector, and I'll clean it up at the end. So we put our fascia back on, and it did clip into place this time. You can see there's our electrical connector there. So we are going to trim out right around it. We can even leave it here in place and just use these snips like we did before to cut out around it. You do want to keep in mind that this door here does need to flip up high enough for your connector to go under it. So you may need to take a little bit more out than you initially thought. But I recommend trimming first, testing the fit, and then trimming more later if you need to. And now we're just going to test it out. It is awfully hard to get in there. It does flip up, so it looks really nice, but you may want to trim some more just to make it a little bit easier to access this little connector here. And I would just recommend just trimming these. I'm going to go ahead and just finish trimming these off just because it's really difficult to flip that up. I don't want them to accidentally push it sideways and potentially cause some damage to the hinge up there. So make things easier on yourself. So we're just going to snip this right out of here. And now we're just going to go back and clean up any of the marks we'd made. We're just using some rubbing alcohol on a cloth to do so. It works pretty well on getting like a paint stick and stuff off like that. At this point now we can finish reinstalling our fascia in reverse order of how we removed it. When reinstalling your fascia, once you've got everything in, you did have a couple of rivets that we drilled out. You do get new rivets with your base plate to go in place. You will need a plastic rivet gun. You should be able to pick that up at your local hardware store. We're going to slide the rivet in. We're then going to slide that into the hole where our old rivet used to be, and we're just going to squeeze our rivet gun. When you let go of the rivet gun, you just kind of want to repeat this process, and that's going to pull the rivet nice and tight until it breaks the end off and holds it in place. The end that is then broke off in here, typically you can just take your next rivet and just push that out with it. So we're going to repeat this for the other rivet on this side, and then we're going to do this for the two on the other side. And that completes our installation of Demco's Tabless Base Plate on our 2017 Jeep Grand Cherokee.